Hello and welcome. Well, you guys already know what this video is about because you clicked on that thumbnail. So yes, I received my fragrance a couple of days ago and it came around midday, like around 11 a.m. And as soon as I received it, I opened that box, opened the fragrance, sprayed it on and started testing. So I tested it for a good 8 hours that first day. And then the second day, I tested it for a good 12 to 14 hours. So today I am ready to give you all of the details related to this fragrance, and I also have some very interesting comparisons. So I have a lot to say, so let's just get going. But before we jump right in, if this is your first time here, I'm Arahi, and in this channel we love to talk about fragrances. I upload videos on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Sundays, and sometimes like today, you even get a bonus video for the week. If that sounds like the type of content that you're interested in and like a good plan, then please consider subscribing, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget, leave a comment. Let's go. So this is the box that the fragrance comes in. And mine has a little tear. I guess they had some sort of issue. And then here is the fragrance. This is a fragrance that I would definitely consider to be a gourmand. And it is very yummy, but it's a bit more lactonic than yummy, if you know what I mean. But I will tell you, the smell is just unbelievable. As soon as I sprayed this fragrance, it immediately reminded me of Giardini di Toscana's Bianco Latte, without a shadow of a doubt. There's no confusing, at least to my nose, this fragrance with any other fragrance in my collection. This is definitely one that was more than just inspired by Bianco Latte. And before I forget, if you're interested in picking it up because you haven't picked it up, I will of course link it in the description box below. And I also want you to know that in addition to the link, I will be including a discount code that you can use to get 10% off the fragrance. All right, so let me start by saying that this review is going to be a little bit different because I have to, guys, approach this review in a different way because the elephant in the room is all about Caramel Cascade and Giardini di Toscana Bianco Latte. So we are going to approach it from that angle because, and you'll see, it's the best way today. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start by sharing the notes of each fragrance. And I really encourage you to pay attention to the note structure of each fragrance. All right, guys, so I have tested, like I said in the opening, this fragrance quite thoroughly. And then I had a couple of sessions where I compared it directly to Bianco Latte because, as I'm sure you now understand by looking at the notes, there are minimal differences to the note structure. But in case you did not notice, let me bring a couple of things to your attention. So when it comes to Caramel Cascade, the opening is all about the note of milk and caramel, while in Bianco Latte, the opening note is all about caramel. Now, in the midsection of the note tier structure, we find that in Bianco Latte, it is all about the note of coumarin and honey. In Caramel Cascade, in that same middle note tier of the note structure, we are finding that it's all about tonka and honey. Now, at the base, we find the exact same notes, which are vanilla and white musk. We find that at the base of both Bianco Latte and Caramel Cascade. But before I go directly into the comparison of both of these fragrances, let me tell you a little bit about what I found during testing Caramel Cascade. Caramel Cascade is truly a unisex fragrance. It is a lovely, lovely fragrance. And typically at this point, I would go and talk to you about the olfactory journey, but I'm not going to do that in this review because I want to reserve that for when I do the comparison with Bianco Latte. This fragrance just arrived 2 days ago, as I mentioned before, and I do not see a production date on this bottle anywhere. But I can tell you that, of course, we know it's going to need to macerate. But guys, when I tell you this is already almost, if not, beast mode, I am getting a minimum of 8 hours from this fragrance. But in all reality, the day that I tested it for 12 plus hours, at the 10-hour mark, I was still getting very strong whiffs of this fragrance from my skin and from my clothes. This is a fragrance that has a very strong projection. I am talking about the first 2 hours. The projection that I get from this fragrance is about 3 to 4 feet, which is quite spectacular. This fragrance has a very strong sillage because when stepping out on that 12 plus hour test day, I did get a couple of compliments, and one person did not compliment me on it, but they did ask me what I was wearing. This fragrance, as I said before, is getting me a minimum of 8 hours, and I find that that strong projection goes up to right around about 3 hours, at which time it becomes a very strong scent bubble with quite a bit of radius to it. Then around the 6 hours to 7 hour mark, it definitely becomes a skin scent. But guys, it is so peculiar because I could get whiffs of this fragrance up until the time that it was time for me to bathe to go to sleep that night. Oh, and let's talk about how it lasts on your clothes. The clothes that I wore the first and the second day are currently in my hamper. This scent has permeated all of the other pieces of garment that I have in the hamper currently. But in addition, when I open that specific small closet where I keep my hamper and my husband's hamper, all we can smell is this fragrance. This is a fragrance that I definitely recommend that you use all seasons except summer. I'll talk more about it in a minute, but this is definitely, much like Bianco Latte, this is not a fragrance that I would pull at all during the summer season, guys. This is really a very strong fragrance. And because of that lactonic quality to it, it can be a little bit overbearing. All right, so let's talk about both of these fragrances and let's compare them. The opening of these fragrances is really not exactly the same. It's really not. And what I recommend is that if you did pick up Caramel Cascade, that you spray it on your skin. And if you own Bianco Latte or have a sample or a decant, spray it on your skin. Allow that initial burst to just dissipate a bit and then sniff it. What you will realize is that Bianco Latte opens up with a very dominant, very dominant note of caramel. That caramel is quite thick and dense, giving it kind of like if you had caramel like in a pot and it started to burn a little bit, like that kind of smell. But it's not that the caramel is burnt. No, it's that the note of caramel in Bianco Latte is quite intense. Now, when we look at Caramel Cascade's opening, it is different because Caramel Cascade opens with a very dominant note of milk. This milk is like mixed with the caramel, but there's more milk than caramel when they were mixed together. So the lactonic quality of the fragrance of Caramel Cascade in the opening is quite prominent and extremely emphasized versus the caramel. Now, one of the key differences between these two fragrances that became extremely apparent to my nose almost immediately, because as soon as the opening is done, both of these fragrances transition into that kind of spicy with honey, spicy with tonka kind of effect. And if you spray them both on your skin and then you sniff and compare and you take the time to allow it to settle, you will realize that there is a very noticeable difference in that midpoint of the olfactory journey. When it comes to Bianco Latte, the mid notes are coumarin and honey. Coumarin is a spice. And when it comes to Caramel Cascade, we are talking about tonka bean and honey. That makes quite a bit of difference in the olfactory journey when comparing these two fragrances. You will find that all throughout the Bianco Latte journey, there is a hint of a spicy quality in the background of the caramel and all the other notes that we're going to talk about in a minute. But that spiciness continues to be present in the background throughout the entire olfactory journey and at the dry down. Versus in Caramel Cascade, where we find that in the mid-tier, you start to pick up on that tonka bean combined with that honey. The honey in Caramel Cascade is not as dense, not syrupy, but not as dense to my nose as the one in Bianco Latte. It's a bit lighter. But because the honey is less dense in Caramel Cascade, it allows that milk note to again be a bit dominant. Not as dominant as in the opening, but the milk note is definitely there and dominant to a certain degree. The honey and the milk in Caramel Cascade have been mixed beautifully, but still you can clearly distinguish that it is a note of milk and not just a tonality that results in giving the fragrance kind of like a quality. No, in Caramel Cascade, you are definitely going to know that it is the note of milk. The curious thing for me, and just the beauty of how sometimes things just work out, is that at the dry down, guys, you are getting what I would consider to be about 90% the same fragrance. Because at the dry down with both fragrances, you're going to get the most yummy and perfect and delicious caramel vanilla with a powdery dry down. But the difference will reside in the fact that at the dry down, there's going to be a touch of a spicy quality in the Bianco Latte dry down that you will not find in Caramel Cascade, but you will pick up on the note of tonka. Both the spicy note and the tonka note are just faint and in the background, because at the dry down of both of these fragrances, what you are going to get is that beautiful mix of caramel and vanilla with a lactonic quality that's quite present, not dominant, but quite present, sitting on the base of that powdery dry down. All in all, I highly recommend this fragrance. It truly is, to my nose, 90% the same as Bianco Latte. So if you've wanted to pick up Bianco Latte, but budget has been a consideration, or you just haven't had the chance to pick it up, I would definitely recommend that you consider picking up Caramel Cascade. For me, having both in my collection is very important because, of course, I review fragrances. But I have to be honest with you, if I did not review fragrances and I did not have Bianco Latte, I would probably give Caramel Cascade a try. Now, for those of you that have both, I think you may feel as I do that this is a win-win, because I now have what I would consider to be a backup bottle of Bianco Latte for the most part. And I also feel that having both in my collection is not a detriment, because to my nose, there are interesting differences. One more thing that I did want to mention is that when it comes to both of these fragrances, because this one is has more of a lactonic presence to it, because of that strong note of milk, which is with you through most of the olfactory journey, and then at the dry down, it's still there, very present. I would say that this is a fragrance that I would not consider using ever during the summer season, because it's just a bit too much. But this one may be a fragrance that if it's, moderately warm during an evening or for a night occasion, I may dare to pull it and use it during the summer season. The other thing that I wanted to caution you on is if you are not into lactonic fragrances, these two fragrances are not for you. If you have this fragrance and you just tolerate it, I would highly discourage you from picking this fragrance up because the level of lactonic quality to this one is way more intense than this one. At the dry down, they're both pretty much the same. I mean, 90% is really high. It's just that I pick up, like I said before, on the differences between the spicy coumarin nature of this one and the tonka nature of this one. Before you ask me which one do I like the most, I can't even distinguish it enough to tell you which one I like the most because the difference between these two fragrances is so negligible that it doesn't even allow me to discern and be able to tell you if I prefer one from the other. At the end of the day, these are both lovely, lovely fragrances. This is an exceptional fragrance, and with this one they have done an exceptional job at mirroring the note design that was found in this one. Anyway, guys, that's all I wanted to cover with you today. I just felt that I really needed to get this review out to you. And if you have any questions, remember, just leave it for me in the comments section. And thank you so much for hanging with me today. Let me know if you've received your Caramel Cascade and what are your thoughts on it. I would also love to know, for those of you that have both fragrances, Bianco Latte and Caramel Cascade, what are your thoughts? What do you see? Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.